the society has changed over the last 50 years. This isn't controversial. Things have broken down in terms of family structure in a lot of ways, and there's going to be effects, good or bad. There's going to be effects for that, and one of the effects is that link between the kid and the parent is more tenuous now. Meaning that then you must trust institutions. Meaning that then you will inevitably have, because institutions are not perfect, even if they're you'll have involvement, but you also have mistakes.
Yeah.
And then my guess is that with enough of that, and then it can snowball into a kind of panic and into a real problem. But anyway, look, I'm not going to write a parenting book anytime soon.
No. I think what's interesting is the intersection of the family structure and certain political ideologies, because I know that there is, I don't know how much it's true to Marxism as the doctrine itself, or whether it's specifically something that's more in the modern ilk, but I know that there was a little bit of an upset for a while when the Black Lives Matter organization, the actual organization, not like the movement or whatever, stated, I think it was on their website, they said very blankly that they believe in the deconstruction of the family unit, something to that effect. And my concern with that is that it ties in with this discussion nicely, because again, when you have the breakdown of the family unit, as the family becomes more involved with the external world, whether that is commerce or government in the form of public school or industry, then there becomes this intermediary within the family. And that becomes the state in many ways. And if your goal is a stronger state, a state that has more involvement in people's lives, would it not make sense then to break down the family structure so that the state becomes that much more involved in your family affairs? So now the state has a large say in how you raise your child. And I mean, if you go to look at like China, you had the state involvement in family planning. You couldn't decide how many kids you wanted to have. That was the state's decision. So it's an interesting thing to consider, especially on the left, like this idea that the family is political. There's this idea of the family as having some kind of some involvement in that ideology. And I wonder about that, because then it means what do they see? What do they see in the family that warrants involvement like that?
Well, so it's fairly, I don't want to say simple, but let's talk in a general sense about, why are we talking about communism and Freddy Krueger? I'm not exactly sure. But briefly, okay. Yeah, the state needs the family out of the way, because the state is the lowest level of social organization that can defy the state. So
no, the state is the lowest level of social organization that can defy the state.
Sorry, the family is the low. So you can say, imagine the individual, and then the family is next, right? And then ever increasing hierarchies of organizations. The family is the second to last, essentially, besides the individual, organization which can defy the state. That's why in communist countries in the past, one of the most corrosive things to do was to get informants so you'd have people informing on their neighbors or even their own family members. So you need to, plus the family unit, the traditional family unit in, let's say, the Western world is associated with a lot of traditional values. If your program is to change the values of a society and change the structure of that society, you must eliminate the source of those traditional values.
Yeah.
So this isn't a theory. This is real, that practitioners of Marxism, communism, I won't go so far to use the word socialism because that means so many different things to different people. But, the family unit is
an obstacle
to that. And this is, don't take it from me, listen to people that lived in Eastern Europe, that lived in the Soviet Union, that, as you rightly point out, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist government told you how many kids you could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, fucked it up.
Well,
because now they have a huge demographic problem. So beyond whether or not you have the ethics or morality of thinking that's okay, and hey, I think the state does know what's right. Here's the thing. The state doesn't even always get it right. Mm-hmm. So anytime you want to say, hey, give it over to the state, give it over to some sort of utopian vision of the state, you got to remember, you're assuming they're even correct in the first place.
Yeah, and there's always unintended consequences to those kinds of central planning. But there's something uniquely devious in the idea of governmental involvement in family planning. Central planning for families seems incredibly dystopian. This idea that the state would mandate how many children someone could have. And of course, there's the argument, they're curbing overpopulation, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions.